The papers sat on my marble countertop, stark white against the gray stone. My signature was already on them, shaking but complete. 3 months of legal battles had led to this moment. 3 months of my life being torn apart, analyzed, and priced. My husband, Richard Vance, tech visionary, billionaire, and now my personal tormentor, had left me with nothing. Not literally, of course. That would be too messy, too traceable. Instead, he'd crafted a masterpiece of financial cruelty. Our joint accounts were frozen. My credit cards declined. The penthouse we shared was technically mine, but the maintenance fees were suddenly astronomical. Even the car in my name had been repossessed for non-payment of a lease I never knew existed. "You should have signed the prenup," his lawyer had told me across the polished mahogany table. Mr. Vance was very clear about his intentions. Richard hadn't wanted a prenup when we married 10 years ago. He'd been romantic then, still building his empire, still seeing me as a partner rather than an asset. Now, Vance Technologies was worth billions, and I was a liability. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the digital gaslighting. Richard's army of tech geniuses had infiltrated every aspect of my digital life. Emails I'd never sent appeared in my sent folder. My social media posted cryptic messages at 3 a.m. My smart home system spoke to me in the middle of the night. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years received desperate messages from my accounts. "He's trying to make you look unstable," my sister Jenna had told me over coffee, her hand covering mine. "It's a classic tactic." I nodded, but the words felt hollow. How could I fight someone who had built the very systems he was using against me? How could I prove I wasn't losing my mind when all evidence pointed to the contrary? That's when Marcus entered my life. He wasn't like the other lawyers I'd interviewed. No flashy suit, no condescending smile, just a simple gray suit, quiet demeanor, and eyes that seemed to notice everything. "Mrs. Vance," he'd said during our first meeting, his voice calm and measured. "Your situation is more complex than a standard divorce proceeding." "No kidding," I'd replied, my voice laced with sarcasm. "My soon-to-be ex-husband is trying to digitally erase me." Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table between us. "What if I told you that Richard's activities extend far beyond your divorce? What if I told you that he's using this messy legal battle as cover to liquidate his assets and vanish?" I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Vance Technologies isn't just a successful tech company," Marcus continued, his voice dropping lower. "It's a front for one of the most sophisticated cyber fraud operations in history. Your husband hasn't just been building software, he's been building an empire of stolen identities, laundered money, and ruined lives." My mind raced. Richard had always been secretive about certain aspects of his business, but I'd assumed it was standard corporate privacy. Not this. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus reached into his briefcase, placed a badge on the table. "FBI, Special Agent Marcus Thorne. I've been investigating Richard for 3 years," he said. "We've been close, but we've never been able to get inside his inner circle. Until now." I stared at the badge, then at Marcus. "You want me to help you?" "I want you to become a confidential informant," he corrected. "Help us get the evidence we need to take down his entire operation, a network that has stolen billions from innocent people. In return, we'll ensure you get your settlement and your life back." The irony was suffocating. The man who was trying to destroy me was now offering me a way to save myself by destroying him. "Why me?" I asked. "Why now?" "Because Richard trusts you, or at least he underestimates you," Marcus explained. "He sees you as the emotional broken wife. That makes you invisible. That makes you dangerous." I thought about the past 3 months, the frozen accounts, the digital sabotage, the systematic destruction of my reputation. Richard hadn't just been preparing for a divorce. He had been preparing to disappear. "What would I have to do?" I asked, my decision already forming. Marcus's eyes met mine. "You'd have to play the part. Be the desperate, broken wife he thinks you are. Feed him false information. Record his conversations. Transfer encrypted files to us. And if I get caught?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Then Richard will make sure you disappear for real." The choice wasn't really a choice at all. It was survival. "I'm in," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. Marcus nodded, as if he'd expected nothing less. "Good, we'll start tomorrow." As I left his office, The weight of what I'd agreed to settled in. I wasn't just fighting for my financial future anymore. I was fighting for my life, and I was about to become a double agent in my own marriage. The burner phone felt like a brick in my purse, a cheap black plastic thing that seemed out of place next to my designer wallet and car keys. Marcus had given it to me an hour ago, along with my first set of instructions. "Richard will be home tonight," Marcus had said, his voice a low murmur in the parking garage of his office building. "He'll want to gloat. Let him. Your job is to plant this." He'd handed me a device no bigger than a thumb drive, a listening bug. His office, the back of his desktop monitor. He never looks there. My first mission. I practiced my lines in the mirror, forcing tears to my eyes. I needed to look defeated, not defiant. I needed to be the woman he thought I was. Richard arrived at 9, smelling of expensive whiskey and even more expensive perfume. He didn't even try to hide it. "Still here, darling?" he asked, tossing his keys onto the kitchen counter where the divorce papers still lay. "I thought you'd be out shopping with your sister's credit card by now." "I have nothing, Richard," I said, my voice cracking on cue. "You've taken everything." He laughed, a cold, grating sound. "I didn't take anything. I simply reclaimed what was mine. You were a decorative asset, Alara, and like most decorations, you've lost your shine." The words were meant to hurt, and they did. But beneath the sting, a cold, hard anger was forming. He wasn't just a greedy ex-husband. He was a monster. "I just want to know why," I whispered, letting a single tear trace a path down my cheek. "After 10 years. 10 years of you enjoying the lifestyle I built," he snapped, his patience wearing thin. "Be grateful for the experience. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do." He stormed off toward his office, the door closing behind him with a soft click. This was my chance. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence of the penthouse. I waited 5 minutes, then 10, giving him time to settle in. I pushed the door open slowly. "Richard, can we talk just for a minute?" He was at his desk, facing a wall of monitors displaying lines of code and fluctuating stock tickers. He didn't turn around. "We have nothing to talk about." I don't want it to end like this," I said, moving closer to his desk. My hands trembled, but I kept them clasped in front of me, hiding the bug. He sighed, swiveling in his chair. "Fine, what do you want?" "To understand," I said, my eyes scanning the back of his monitor. It was exactly as Marcus described, a mess of cables, perfect cover. Was any of it real? He looked at me, a flicker of something, pity, amusement in his eyes. "It was real enough, but people change. I evolved. You stayed the same." He gestured dismissively. "Now, is this over?" I nodded, letting another tear fall. "Yes, it's over." As I turned to leave, I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of his desk. My right hand shot out, and in that split second, I pressed the bug into the tangle of wires behind the monitor. It clicked into place with a tiny, almost inaudible snap. "Clumsy," Richard remarked. "I guess I'm just a mess," I said, my back to him as I walked to the door. "Don't worry," he called after me. "You'll get used to being nothing." I closed the door and walked straight to the guest bathroom, locking the door behind me. I leaned against the cool wood, my legs shaking so badly I thought they might give out. I had done it. I was in. I pulled out the burner phone. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed a simple message. "Eagle is in the nest." A moment later, the reply came back. "Acknowledged. Good work. Stand by." The cold, impersonal nature of the exchange sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't a partnership. It was a transaction. I was a tool. Later that night, unable to sleep, I crept back to Richard's office. The door was unlocked. He was passed out in his chair, an empty tumbler on the desk beside him. On the main monitor, an email client was open. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have, but I did. The subject line of the latest sent email read, "Project Chimera, Asset Liquidation Phase 2 Complete." The body was a string of numbers and letters, a coded message. But below it, there was an attachment. A list, not of stocks or bonds, of names. Hundreds of them. Next to each name was a date and a dollar amount. A final, devastating column listed the current status of each person. Foreclosed, bankrupt, deceased. These weren't just anonymous victims of a cyber fraud scheme. They were people. People whose lives Richard had systematically destroyed for sport. And my name was on that list, right at the top, with the status, "In progress." I backed away slowly, the bile rising in my throat. This wasn't about divorce anymore. It wasn't even about the money. Richard Vance was a predator, and I had just walked into his den. The next morning, I met Marcus in a crowded coffee shop downtown. The anonymity of the place was a small comfort. He sat in a corner booth, a newspaper spread out before him, looking like any other man on his way to work. I slid into the seat opposite him. "The bug is active," I said, my voice low. "He had a visitor last night. I couldn't make out the conversation, but you should have it." "Good," Marcus said, not looking up from his paper. "What did you do after he went to sleep?" My breath hitched. I hadn't told him about looking at the monitor. I went back to my room. He finally looked at me, his eyes piercing. "Don't lie to me, Alara. It's a waste of time and dangerous for both of us. You saw something." I hesitated, then described the list. The names, the statuses, my own name at the top. As I spoke, Marcus's expression remained unreadable, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Satisfaction? Confirmation? "Project Chimera," he said when I finished. "We've heard whispers. It's his endgame, a final, massive liquidation before he vanishes. The fact that he's monitoring you means he sees you as a loose end." "A loose end he plans to tie up," I corrected, my voice shaking. "Which is why you need to stick to the plan," Marcus said, his tone hardening. "No freelancing, no rogue missions. Your job is to be a channel, not an investigator. Understood?" "Understood," I bit out. He slid a folded napkin across the table. On it was a series of numbers, letters, and symbols. "This is an account number for a bank in the Cayman Islands. It's a ghost account we set up. It has a balance of $50,000 in it, just enough to be believable." "What am I supposed to do with it?" "Your husband thinks you're broken and desperate," Marcus explained. "He also thinks you're greedy. Let's prove him right. You're going to let it slip that you have a rainy day fund he doesn't know about, an account your father set up for you before he died. This is the number." The plan was insane. Richard would tear me apart to get to that money. "He'll never believe it." "He will," Marcus said with a confidence I didn't share. "Because it's exactly what he would do in your position. It feeds his ego. It proves he's smarter than you, that you're just a cunning little gold digger. He'll try to drain it. And when he does, we'll have him. We'll trace the digital transfer straight back to his network." That evening, I put the plan in motion. I ordered Richard's favorite takeout and set the table in the dining room, a space we hadn't used in months. He came home, surprised by the gesture. "What's this?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "A Last Supper?" "A peace offering," I said, forcing a smile. "I was wrong to fight you. You've won. I just want to move on." He studied me, a predator assessing his prey. "Go on." I let the performance take over. I played the part of the defeated wife who had one last secret weapon. I told him about the inheritance from my father, a nest egg I'd kept hidden for a rainy day. I even cried, telling him I was tired of fighting and just wanted to give him the money if it meant he would leave me alone. I watched his face as I accidentally knocked over my glass of wine, and as I cleaned it up, I dropped the napkin with the account number on the floor near his feet. He didn't pick it up. Not then. But I saw his eyes flick down to it. The seed was planted. For the next 2 days, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Richard barely spoke to me. He spent all his time in his office, the door closed. I began to feel a sliver of hope. Maybe it was working. Then, on the third night, he emerged. He was holding the bug I had planted. "Care to explain this?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. My blood ran cold. I felt the color drain from my face. I don't know what that is." "Don't lie to me, Alara," he said, echoing Marcus's words from the coffee shop. He tossed the bug onto the kitchen counter. It skittered across the marble and stopped near my hand. "I run a weekly diagnostic on my systems. A new, unauthorized device popped up, a high-frequency audio transmitter. Very sophisticated, not something you buy at Radio Shack." I said nothing, my mind racing for an excuse, a lie, anything. "Who are you working for?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Was it Marcus, your new lawyer? Did he put you up to this?" I stared at him, truly terrified for the first time. He knew about Marcus. "Richard, please," I stammered. "I can explain." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, I'm sure you can, but it doesn't matter. You think you're playing a game? You think you're some kind of secret agent?" He leaned in close, his face inches from mine. You're a pawn, and pawns get sacrificed. He straightened up, smoothing his suit jacket. I have to say, I'm disappointed. I thought you were just a gold digger. Turns out, you're just stupid. He walked away, leaving me trembling in the kitchen. He hadn't hurt me. Not physically, but the look in his eyes was a promise. He was going to destroy me. I waited until I heard the front door close behind him. I ran to the bathroom and locked the door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type on the burner phone. He knows. He found the bug. He knows about Marcus. The response was almost immediate. Stay where you are. We're coming to get you. The 30 minutes I waited for the FBI felt like a lifetime. Every creak of the building, every distant siren sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I was trapped in a gilded cage, and the hunter was on his way back. Then I saw them, not through the window, but on my phone. Marcus had sent me a link to a live feed of the building's security cameras. 2 black, unmarked SUVs pulled up to the curb, silent as shadows. Men and women in dark, tactical gear poured out, moving with a fluid, practiced efficiency that was terrifying to watch. A soft knock on the bathroom door, not Richard's heavy, demanding knock. A quick, precise rap. 3 taps. It's Marcus, a low voice whispered through the wood. Open the door. Now. I unlocked it. He wasn't in his gray suit. He was dressed in black, a Kevlar vest strapped over his chest. A weapon was holstered at his hip. He looked like a different person, harder, colder. We have to go, he said, his voice all business. Richard's on his way back. He tripped a silent alarm, leaving the building. He grabbed my arm, his grip firm. Stay behind me. Don't speak. Don't make eye contact with anyone. We moved through the penthouse, a place that had been my home, now just a crime scene. Other agents were already inside, sweeping the rooms, planting devices of their own. One was at Richard's computer, a small drive plugged into the tower. Anything? Marcus asked. His system's locked down tight, the agent replied without looking up. He's wiping it remotely. He knows we're here. Let him go, Marcus said, pulling me toward the door. We have what we need. We stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I looked back at the life I was leaving behind. The art on the walls, the view of the city lights. It all felt like a dream I was waking up from, a nightmare that was finally ending. I was wrong. The FBI safe house was a sterile, 2-bedroom condo in a faceless suburb. White walls, beige carpet, and furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. There were no personal touches, no life. It was a place to hide. Marcus sat across from me at the kitchen table. He changed back into his suit as if the raid had never happened. He placed a bottle of water in front of me. You're safe here, he said. Richard won't find you. Did you get him? I asked, my voice hoarse. He's gone, Marcus said. Vanished. The raid forced his hand. He initiated his escape protocol sooner than we anticipated, but we expected that. I frowned. Expected it? I thought you were going to arrest him. Our primary objective was evidence, he corrected, and we got it. Thanks to you. A flicker of pride warmed me. I had done it. I had helped them. What's next? I testify? I go into witness protection? Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. There's not going to be a trial, Elara. What? Why not? You have the evidence. You have me. We have enough evidence to build a case, he said, his voice flat, clinical. We've had it for months. Financial records, server logs from overseas, testimony from a former associate he left for dead in Bulgaria. We didn't need the bug in his office. We didn't need the Cayman account transfer. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I don't understand. Richard Vance is a ghost, Elara. He's a master of digital deception. Building a case against him was one thing. Getting him to come out into the open so we could find him was another. We needed a distraction, something that would consume his attention, make him arrogant, force him to make a mistake. He looked me straight in the eye. We needed you. We needed your messy, emotional, public divorce. We needed him to focus all his energy on destroying you, because while he was focused on you, he wasn't watching us. The words hit me like a physical blow. The frozen accounts, the digital gaslighting, the feeling of losing my mind. It hadn't just been Richard's cruelty. It had been part of their plan. They had watched me drown and had done nothing to save me because my drowning was the entire point. You used me, I whispered, the realization a cold, hard knot in my stomach. We used your situation, he corrected, a hint of impatience in his tone. It was the most effective way to neutralize a threat to national security. You played your part perfectly. My part? I shot to my feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. You let me believe I was fighting for my life. You let me think he was going to kill me. And if we had told you the truth, would you have been so convincing? He countered. Would your terror have been real? Your desperation? Richard is a genius at reading people. He had to believe you were broken, and you were. You just didn't know you were broken for us. I stared at him, the man I had thought was my savior. He wasn't my lawyer. He wasn't my ally. He was my handler. And I had been his pawn from the very beginning. The final piece, I said, the words coming out cold and clear. The key to his offshore server. You still need it. Marcus nodded, a small, triumphant smile on his face. We do, and you're going to give it to us. He thought he had won. He thought I was just a tool to be used and discarded. Richard had seen me as a decorative asset. Marcus saw me as a strategic one. They were both wrong. They had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated me. They had pushed me to the brink, stripped me of everything, and forgotten one crucial thing. When you have nothing left to lose, you become the most dangerous person in the room. My revenge wasn't over. It was just getting started. Yes, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I'll give you the key. But as I said it, I thought of the tiny micro SD card I had palmed from Richard's office during the raid, a backup drive he had overlooked, a drive that contained not just the key to his server, but the real list of Project Chimera, the one with the names of his co-conspirators, the one the FBI still didn't have. They wanted their war. I was going to give them one. Marcus didn't leave. He stayed, watching me, a silent guardian in a sterile prison. He thought he had me. He thought the shock of his betrayal would render me pliable, compliant. He was right about the shock, but he was wrong about the result. It didn't break me. It forged me. The key, he said the next morning, breaking the tense silence. Where is it? It's not a physical key, I said, choosing my words carefully, mimicking the calm, analytical tone he used with me. Richard is too smart for that. It's a sequence, a password. He gave it to me on our first anniversary. He said it was the key to his heart, a romantic inside joke. I looked down at my hands, feigning a mix of sadness and resolve. It's a line from a poem, the only one he ever loved. I wrote it down in a journal. It's in a safe deposit box under my maiden name. Marcus nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. He believed me. He wanted to believe me, because it made his job easier. Which bank? He asked. That's the problem, I said, leaning forward, letting a hint of desperation creep into my voice. It's a small, private bank in Geneva. I can't just walk in. Richard has alerts on everything. If the box is accessed by anyone but me, or if I'm not accompanied by him, it triggers a silent alarm. He'll know. I was improvising, building a cage of lies around him, using his own tactics against him. I was creating a problem only I could solve. So what's the solution? Marcus asked, his patience wearing thin. I have to go, I said. Alone. I'll tell him I'm going to close the box to get the last bit of money I have. He'll think I'm finally giving up, that I'm taking the cash and disappearing. He'll let me go. He'll even be proud of his clever ex-wife for pulling one over on him. It feeds his ego. It was a risky plan, but it was the only one that gave me control. Marcus would never agree to let me go alone. He'd want to send a team to wire me, to turn me into a puppet again. I had to make him see that my way was the only way. He was silent for a long time, considering it. I could see the gears turning in his head, weighing the risks. The risk of me running versus the reward of getting the key. No, he finally said. Too many variables. You'll give us the location of the bank and the box number. We'll handle it from there. Panic flared in my chest. I had to sell this. I had to make it believable. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. You don't get it. He knows every trick you have. He built half of them. If he sees a single federal agent within a mile of that bank, he'll crash the global economy just to spite you. He has dead man's switches, Marcus. He told me once, laughing, that if he ever went down, he was taking the whole world with him. I was pacing now, my voice rising with manufactured hysteria. This is my only chance, our only chance. Let me do this. Let me finish it. I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. The threat of a global economic crash was a powerful motivator. It was a lie, but it was a plausible one, given Richard's reputation. I need to think, he said, standing up and walking to the window. As he turned his back, I made my move. I slipped my hand into my pocket and felt the cool, hard plastic of the micro SD card. I had bought a cheap, portable card reader weeks ago, hiding it in the lining of my purse, a paranoid impulse that was now my only salvation. While Marcus was in the shower that morning, I had used it. I had seen everything. Project Chimera wasn't just about stealing money, it was about control. The list on that card wasn't just victims, it was a network. Politicians, judges, media moguls, foreign dictators, people who owed Richard favors or who he had blackmailed into submission. It was a shadow government, and Marcus knew. The FBI had to know. That's why they couldn't just arrest him. It would trigger a constitutional crisis, a war in the shadows they couldn't win. They needed me to be the scapegoat, the woman scorned who took down her evil husband, a neat and tidy story to hide the messy truth. They weren't just using me to get Richard. They were using me to contain the fallout. All right, Marcus said, turning back to me. We'll do it your way. But you're wired. You're tracked. And at the first sign of trouble, we move in. It was a concession, a victory. I understand, I said, my head bowed in submission. But that night, I didn't sleep. I waited. At 3 a.m., I put my plan into motion. I stumbled out of my bedroom, clutching my stomach, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Marcus, I cried out, collapsing to the floor. Help me. He was out of his room in seconds, his gun drawn. He saw me on the floor, his training taking over. He holstered his weapon and rushed to my side. What's wrong? He asked, checking my pulse. Pain. Chest. Can't breathe, I gasped. He grabbed his phone. I'm calling a medic. As he was distracted, I made my move. I'd loosened the screws on the back of the living room smoke detector earlier. With a final convulsive shudder, I fainted, knocking my head against the wall as I fell. It was just hard enough to trigger the faulty detector. A piercing shriek filled the condo. The fire alarm. Damn it! Marcus yelled, fumbling with his phone and trying to check on me at the same time. In the chaos, I crawled, not toward the door, but toward the air vent in the corner of the room, the one I had pried loose earlier that day. I shoved the micro SD card deep inside, pushing it with my finger until it disappeared into the darkness. The medics arrived. They asked questions. I gave them vague answers, playing the part of the traumatized, overwrought woman. They decided to transport me to the hospital for observation. As they wheeled me out on a gurney, I saw Marcus watching me, his expression a mixture of concern and suspicion. He thought he was still in control. He thought I was just a broken pawn. He had no idea. The game had changed. The key wasn't in Geneva. It was here. And now, I was the only one who knew where to find it. The hospital was a cacophony of beeping machines and hurried footsteps. It was the perfect place to disappear. The two agents posted outside my room were professionals, but they were expecting a terrified woman, not a strategist. A nurse came in to check my vitals. As she leaned over me, I grabbed her arm, my eyes wide with feigned panic. He's here, I whispered, my voice trembling. The man who did this to me, I saw him. Down the hall, in a gray coat. The nurse, a young woman with kind eyes, immediately looked toward the door, her protective instincts kicking in. It was the only opening I needed. I swung my legs off the gurney, my bare feet silent on the cold linoleum. I grabbed a pair of discarded scrubs from a laundry bin, pulling them on over my hospital gown. I ripped the IV from my arm, ignoring the sharp sting, and moved. I didn't go for the main exit. I followed the signs for the morgue, the one place no one willingly went. The basement was cold and smelled of antiseptic and decay. I found a service exit, pushed it open, and slipped into the alleyway behind the hospital. I was free, but I wasn't safe. I was on foot, with no money, no phone, and two of the most powerful organizations in the world hunting me. I ditched the FBI-issued burner phone in a storm drain. I was officially off the grid. Getting back to the safe house was the first problem. I walked for miles, sticking to shadows, my mind a whirlwind of plans and contingencies. I finally found a bus stop, huddled in the back, and rode it to a shopping mall a few towns over. There, I found a payphone, a relic from another time, but it was my only hope. I called the one person who owed me a favor. Jenna's ex, a small-time hacker named Leo who Richard had ruined years ago. I'd helped him out once, paying his legal fees when Richard's lawyers came after him. Alara? He said, his voice crackling with disbelief. You're supposed to be dead or in witness protection. I need a ride, Leo, and I need you to erase me from every traffic cam and public database you can find for the next 2 hours. He owed me. He agreed. An hour later, his beat-up sedan pulled up beside a deserted bus stop. I slid into the passenger seat. "You're in deep, aren't you?" he asked, his eyes wide. "Deeper than you can imagine," I said. "Just drive." We drove to the suburb, parking 2 blocks away from the condo. The street was quiet, too quiet. One black SUV was still parked out front. They were waiting for me to return, like a spider waiting in its web. "I need a distraction," I told Leo. He nodded, pulling out his laptop. A minute later, every car alarm on the street blared to life. Lights flashed, horns blared. It was chaos. As the 2 agents in front of the house were distracted, I sprinted around the back, using the key Marcus had given me to unlock the rear door. The house was empty. They hadn't found the card. I crawled to the air vent, my heart pounding. I reached inside, my fingers searching the darkness. They brushed against the plastic. I had it. I stood up, the tiny card clutched in my hand. This was it, the power to destroy Richard, the power to destroy Marcus. I could take it to the press, but Marcus's agency would bury the story before it ever saw the light of day. I could try to find another honest cop, but Marcus had already proven that honest was a flexible term in their world. There was only one person who hated Marcus and the FBI as much as I did. The only person who had the skill and the motivation to burn their entire operation to the ground. Richard. He was a monster, but he was a monster to deal with. And he was the only one who could help me get my final revenge. I went back to Leo's car. "I need one more thing," I said. "I need you to find a ghost." I spent the next hour using Leo's equipment, digging through the encrypted back channels of the dark web, using the knowledge I'd gleaned from Richard's rants and Marcus's files. I wasn't looking for Richard's digital footprint. I was looking for his digital ghost, the breadcrumbs he'd left for himself. And then I found it. A dead drop for a secure messaging board hidden inside the source code of an obscure online chess game. A place only a true narcissist would hide. I typed a single message. "It's Ilara. I have Chimera, and I know who you work for. Checkmate." I hit send. A moment later, a reply appeared. "Where?" I smiled for the first time in months. The game had changed. I was no longer a pawn in their war. I was the one holding the board. My revenge wasn't over. It was just getting started. And this time, I was the one making the rules. The coordinates Richard sent back led to an abandoned industrial park on the city's forgotten waterfront. Rusting warehouses loomed in the moonlight, their windows like vacant eyes. It was the perfect place for a ghost to meet a ghost. I arrived first, the micro SD card a warm weight in my pocket. I chose the main warehouse, its massive steel doors hanging ajar. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of salt and decay. In the center of the vast empty space, a single desk and chair sat under a bare light bulb, a scene staged for a confrontation I was now directing. A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness near the far wall. Richard stepped into the circle of light. He looked different, thinner, harder. The arrogant CEO was gone, replaced by something more primal. A predator backed into a corner. "Ilara," he said, his voice a low growl. "I have to admit I'm impressed. I didn't think you had it in you." "I had a good teacher," I replied, my voice steady. "You taught me that in this world, you're either the predator or the prey. I'm done being prey." His eyes flickered to the desk, then back to me. "You have it?" I held up the micro SD card between my thumb and forefinger. "Project Chimera. The real one. Not the sanitized version you fed the FBI. The one with the names of every politician, judge, and journalist on your payroll. The one that details your blackmail schemes. The one that proves your little fraud operation was just a side hustle for your real business, controlling the government." He didn't deny it. A slow, cold smile spread across his face. "So what do you want? Money? A plane ticket to somewhere with no extradition treaty?" "I want what you want," I said, walking around the desk, keeping my distance. "I want to burn Marcus Thorne to the ground." The smile vanished. "The FBI agent? What does he have to do with this?" "Everything," I said. "He wasn't just investigating you, Richard. He was managing you. He let you build your empire because it was useful. He let you steal billions because it was a controllable problem. He only came after you when you got too big, when your Project Chimera started to threaten their own power. I leaned against the desk, mirroring his posture from our last meeting in the penthouse. They used our divorce as a distraction. They let you torture me, let you destroy my life, because it kept you busy. It kept you arrogant. They used me to get to you, and they used you to justify their budget. We were both pawns in their game. Richard was silent, his mind processing the information. I could see the anger building, the fury of a king who realizes he's been a puppet all along. "Why should I believe you?" he finally asked. "Because I have the card," I said simply, "and because I know about the dead man's switch, the one that's not connected to your money, but to the data. If you don't check in every 12 hours, the real Chimera file gets sent to every major news outlet in the world. Not just your list, but the FBI's files on you, the ones that prove they've been watching you for years and did nothing." His expression was a mixture of shock and grudging respect. He hadn't counted on me knowing about that. "They played us," I continued, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He sat in that safe house and told me they had enough evidence to take you down months ago, that I was just a distraction. He let me believe my life was in danger just to make my performance convincing." Richard slammed his fist on the desk, the sound echoing in the cavernous space. "Those arrogant, self-righteous bastards." "So here's my proposal," I said, pushing the card across the desk toward him. "An alliance. Temporary. Truce. We use this. Not to destroy you, and not just to expose them. We use it to rewrite the rules." He picked up the card, studying it as if it were a precious gem. "What's the play?" "They're expecting one of two things," I explained. "Either I'll crawl back to Marcus, begging for protection, or I'll go to the press and they'll bury the story. They're not expecting us to work together. They're not expecting us to turn their own surveillance against them." I pulled out a folded piece of paper and slid it over to him. "This is the frequency for the secure network Marcus's team uses. The one he thinks is untraceable. You can crack it, can't you?" Richard looked at the paper, then at me, and for the first time he saw me not as his ex-wife, not as a victim, but as an equal. "I can do more than crack it," he said, a dangerous glint in his eye. "I can hijack it. I can make it sing any song I want." "Good," I said, "because it's time for the world to hear a new tune. It's time they learned what happens when you underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose." He nodded slowly, a plan already forming behind his eyes. "When?" "Tomorrow," I said, "during the Senate subcommittee hearing on cybersecurity, the one Marcus is testifying at. Let's give him something to really talk about." The game had changed. We were no longer hiding in the shadows. We were about to step into the light, and we were going to bring the whole corrupt house of cards down with us. Our command post was the back of a stolen cargo van parked 3 blocks from the Capitol. On a dozen laptops, Richard had built a digital fortress. Lines of code scrolled across screens, firewalls were erected and dismantled in seconds. He was in his element, a composer conducting a symphony of chaos. On the central monitor, the Senate hearing room was broadcast live, and there he was, Marcus Thorne, in a sharp navy suit, sitting at the witness table with the calm confidence of a man who owned the world. "And so, through a long and painstaking investigation," Marcus said, his voice smooth and convincing, "the FBI was able to neutralize a significant threat to our nation's financial security. The takedown of Richard Vance and his criminal enterprise stands as a testament to this agency's dedication." He was lying. He was taking the credit, basking in the glow of a victory he hadn't truly earned, a victory he had orchestrated by sacrificing me. "He's in," Richard muttered, his fingers flying across a keyboard. "I'm inside their network. I have control of their primary broadcast channel. They won't even know I'm here until I want them to." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the point of no return. In my hand was a new burner phone. On its screen was a single button, execute. Richard had built the system, but I had to be the one to pull the trigger. It was my revenge, after all. I watched Marcus on the screen. He answered a senator's question with a practiced, self-satisfied smile. He thought he had won. He thought I was either in hiding or dead, a loose end tied up. He thought he was the master of the game. "It's time," I whispered. I pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, on the large screen directly behind Marcus, the C-SPAN feed vanished. It was replaced by the Chimera logo, a stylized chimera, a monster of myth. Gasps rippled through the hearing room. Then the names appeared, hundreds of them, politicians, CEOs, foreign officials, each with a photo and a detailed list of their illicit dealings with Richard Vance. The screen became a waterfall of corruption. Marcus turned, his face a mask of confusion. He saw the logo, he saw the names, and then his face went pale. He knew. As if on cue, the room's speakers crackled. My own voice filled the chamber, clear as a bell. It was the recording from the safe house. We had enough evidence to take him down months ago. We needed your messy, emotional, public divorce. You were just a distraction. You played your part perfectly. The recording cut out. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Every camera in the room was now focused on Marcus. The hunter had become the hunted. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by raw, naked panic. In the van, Richard let out a short, sharp laugh. "Checkmate," he said. I watched the chaos unfold on the screen. Senators were shouting, aides were running, reporters were frantically typing on their phones. Marcus was cornered, a man with no escape. I felt a surge of something dark and exhilarating. It wasn't happiness, it was justice. But it wasn't over. I sent one last text from the burner phone, a message to a number I knew by heart. Marcus's private line, the warehouse on the waterfront. Come alone. If you bring anyone, the full unedited file goes to every news agency on the planet. I knew he would come. He had to. He needed to know. He needed to face me. He arrived an hour later, storming into the empty warehouse, his face contorted with rage. "You," he yelled, his voice echoing. "You ruined everything." "I didn't ruin anything," I said, stepping out of the shadows. "I just exposed the truth. You used me, Marcus. You watched my life be destroyed and called it collateral damage." "It was for the greater good," he spat. "He was a monster. So were you," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You took my identity, my history, and twisted it into a weapon. You wanted a broken, desperate pawn. You should have been more careful." I took a step closer. "You don't break a queen and expect her to stay on the board as a pawn. You just make her a more dangerous player." He lunged for me, but I was ready. I sidestepped, and he stumbled, catching himself on the dusty floor. "I have a copy," I said, holding up a second micro SD card. "The only copy. My insurance, you come after me, and this goes public. All of it. Not just the parts that embarrass you, the parts that implicate your entire agency in a conspiracy of silence." He stared up at me, defeated. Just then, the sound of sirens grew loud, closing in fast. Marcus's face twisted into a triumphant sneer. "You're not as smart as you think, Alara. You just led them right to me, and to you." "They're not here for you," a new voice said from the warehouse entrance. Richard stood there, framed in the doorway, a grim smile on his face. Behind him, a team of heavily armed federal agents swarmed into the building. But they weren't aiming their weapons at Richard. They were aiming them at Marcus. "What is this?" Marcus stammered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "A deal," Richard said, his gaze fixed on me. "It seems my dear ex-wife made a counteroffer. My location and testimony in exchange for her complete immunity and a new life." I looked at Marcus, then at Richard. I had played them both. Richard got to avoid a life in a black site, trading his freedom for a comfortable cell. Marcus got the public ruin he so richly deserved. And I watched as they handcuffed Marcus, his face a portrait of shattered ego. I watched as they led Richard away, his look of betrayal the final payment I would ever need from him. I walked out of the warehouse and into the night. I wasn't the woman who had cried over divorce papers. I wasn't the victim or the pawn. I was the one who had won. I had my life back, a new one, built from the ashes of theirs. And this time it would be on my terms.